I got to be the straight man. Every comedy, you have to have the straight guy. It's very important, and that really was sort of Etta's part in that. It was frustrating for me. I mean, when everybody's laughing, you want people to laugh at you too, or with you, I guess. And so in a way, it was sort of hard when they had these great lines, and but it was part of the makeup of the whole thing. I believe that it was a good piece of material to begin with, that it had a beginning, a middle, and an end, that it had the elements, that it had humor, it had romance, it had tragedy, it had everything in a very nice meld. It had 3 extremely likable characters. It was beautifully photographed. It was extremely well directed. I don't think that you think about creating an effect. I think that you have to take a scene, and you have to do it as honestly as you can, given what you have to deal with. You do whatever you have to do, and you hope that it has the effect that you want. And that was what was aimed for in that scene. We totally wanted the audience to be totally surprised at the end of that scene. We wanted them to think that something, I'll say, bad was going to happen. I mean, here's a man with a gun, he's making this girl undress. I mean, is he going to kill her? Is he going to rape her? What's really going to happen? And it had to be totally serious until that very end line. Goldman had said that Etta, that there was always a surprise, but there was a surprise with every character. Every character, there was something that was a little bit different. The most romantic scene that I have is with Butch, and yet I'm Sundance's girlfriend. Sundance, who is supposedly the killer, is afraid, can't swim, and is afraid to jump off the cliff at that moment. So it was a very nice meld of taking these characters, and there were surprises in all of them. And what makes, if we all had sort of the exact formula of what made something appeal to the audiences, we'd all be making great movies all the time. There were 5 or 6 cameras. There were only 4 camera operators. And Conrad said I could operate this camera. This was not in any kind of a key spot for this particular thing. It was an Aeroflex on a McConnell head. I mean, I was just panning across. I had this fantasy of becoming the first woman in the camera union or something, because there weren't any women at that particular moment in time. And I practiced this and practiced doing this shot, just panning these guys along the railroad track. It evidently, I feel very naive, and it was not very bright on my part, but it evidently was upsetting to several people. One of them was the director, who chose not to say anything until after the fact to anybody. And another was, I think, the stuntmen that were riding along the railroad tracks. And I think also some camera operators. They rolled the cameras. I did the shot. And it was the last shot of the day. The set, the set was wrapped. And George Roy Hill, who I guess had observed all of this going on and had chose to sit by the camera that I was operating, and was absolutely furious, only I didn't really realize it at that moment. And he said, I want to talk to you when we get back to the motel. And the end result was that I was banned from the set, except for when I was working. And it was very devastating to me. And in a way, that incident or that action haunted me for the rest of the film. But I think it's in perspective now. I think the parts that I personally enjoyed the most were the improvisational parts, the bike ride, which was a little paragraph in the script and was one of the musical interludes. And it was a series of shots that were set up by George and Conrad. And Paul and I were we were given kind of a path of action as to where to go with this bicycle. But what we did, we filled in. It was a lot of fun. Not terribly comfortable on the bicycle, riding through the orchard and so on, but it was, the thing with the cows really sort of just happened, and it was kind of like taking a coloring book and being able to kind of put in the color. And the other, and then down when we were shooting in Mexico and doing the Bolivian sequence, and there's another sequence like that. Anyway, I enjoyed those parts the most. I think, in a way, it goes back to the camera operating incident, because that happened very early on. I had not started shooting. So when you incur the director's wrath before you've even started shooting a film, any time that you can kind of get away from him was really the best part for me. The progression from rehearsals to filming to end product is always surprising. The rehearsals on this particular film, we were sitting around a table, we'd read a bit, we'd talk a lot about whatever was going on, or it would be described what the set was going to look like, or where we were going to be, or something like that. It was rather flat. You get to the filming part of it, and it becomes more. There's more dimension to it. It's kind of like an oil painting. You start off and you maybe do the background first, and then you layer on something else, and it all begins to take shape and have dimension. I'm always surprised when I see the final product of a film, because there's always more, even though you've been there, you've done it, so to speak, but there is always something more when you're able to see it in an objective way. And there's always a bit of a surprise. I think one of the things that really came out was the humor. Was the first thing in the rehearsal, that you could see the timing of between Redford and Newman. That became better and better as filming went on. You never really know how a movie is going to turn out until it's finally on the screen, and you see, and you're always kind of surprised by something, even though you might have been there for every step of it. I'm very proud to have been in a movie that not only people really liked, but is really a good movie. And so it's so now I like this movie a lot.